Package 3 deals with creative workforce, skills, and education. It has three main objectives. We want to provide a better understanding of career trajectories, challenges, and needs of creative workers. We want to map the role that creative higher education and training can play for future creative workers. And we want to explore issues of inequality and exclusion and how they can be addressed. Work Package 3 has embraced the ecological and inclusive approach promoted by DISCE to the understanding of the creative workforce. Therefore, in our field work, we have included account of people that could not be classified as creative workers necessarily, but that are working at the boundaries of the sector, or trying to enter or trying to support the creative economies in different ways. As you can see from our framework, sustainable creative work is at the core of Work Package 3 analysis. By sustainable creative work, here we mean work that allows people to make a decent livelihood, but also that is sustainable in the long term. However, sustainable creative work is not experienced by all, and for some is only an aspiration or a future trajectory. Many individuals will, over time, during their livelihood, move in and out of sustainable creative work. Sometimes for a range of reasons, sometimes because of their choice, but sometimes because they might be excluded or pushed out by other motivations. The frameworks allows us to consider the broader infrastructure and the ecosystem in which creative workers operate. Obviously, within this ecosystem and in connection to each individual livelihood and life experience, we have identified the 5 key stages and 3 key infrastructures. At each stage, we are interested really in exploring what are the enabling and inhibiting factors for those creative workers.
Young people within compulsory education come across various access opportunities, but also barriers that might affect their aspirations for a creative career. While usually people are too young to access sustainable creative work at this stage, it can happen, and some young people jump straight into creative work after this stage. Then we have higher education stage, but here we also include further education and other skills development. This stage is another key moment in which an individual defines the knowledge needed or that they think is needed towards accessing a creative career. For many, there will be also a phase 3, where individuals take action or commit to finding a sustainable creative job. For some, it is about having access to networks or being flexible, while for others, this is more about becoming an entrepreneur or by opening their own business, for example. Our research found that there are many different strategies and that many people will remain in this stage for a long period of time while working across creative work as well as other jobs.
For some, a sustainable creative career becomes a reality for a very limited period of time. At any time, creative workers can be pushed back to stage 3, for example, through taking a career break or being made redundant. For others, it is about retraining and re-entering education, stage 2. For many, creative work, stage 4, remains part of an active portfolio alongside other personal work opportunities. And then for others, there is a move from creative work towards supporting or fostering work that is directed towards enabling others to participate in creative work, stage 5. And this is a stage of the life cycle that we have found to be very important in the overall cultural ecology. So within this broader framework, we are interested specifically in critically considering the role of 3 key infrastructures in supporting inclusive and sustainable creative work, and those are marked with an asterisk on this framework. The first being higher education, that goes beyond enabling or inhibiting the development of creative careers. Higher education institutions also contribute in different ways to the local creative ecologies. Work employment frameworks beyond access to professions and work, it is important to consider what broader frameworks of employment, social security or equality are available in different countries for creative and cultural workers. And then finally, care structures for creative workers. As part of our ecological framework, what are the different support organisations, intermediaries, and this could be unions, guilds, co-working spaces, festivals, incubator spaces, that have emerged as part of a wider system of care or care structures that contribute to sustainable creative practice. And linked to this, we've explored what we can learn from pockets of resistance or activism that have emerged from within the creative and cultural industries. Our interest in these broader infrastructures is care. has been further developed through a European-wide survey that we conducted in the summer of 2020, and that was targeted specifically at these key support organisations, so trade unions, guilds, bodies, networks, etc., all that are linked specifically to the creative and cultural sector. And the survey has supported our understanding of the wider creative intermediaries and support structures that have evolved to support and foster creative and cultural work.
Overall, the data suggests that it's really important to look ecologically to creative work. Across our 10 case study cities, we found great examples of projects and structures that support different stages of creative work. However, in all of these cities, a full ecological approach is missing, and many of these activities remain silos or isolated rather than being thought in a systematic or ecological way. We hope that the recommendation that we put forward within our final report will help cities think more holistically about how creative work can be experienced and how it needs to be supported across its whole life cycle. No. Okay. So just to say that in the video you have just. Okay, trying again. All working? Okay. With work package 3, we focus on creative work, and as you've seen from the presentation, we try to unpack different stages of creative work to really question what is being inclusive and what is creating sustainable creative work. And with the time that I've got and here, I would really like to expand on some of the data and some of the things we discovered looking at DISCE data across European cities. Of course, each cities have got strengths and weaknesses, and we will use the final report to highlight more those dynamics and find out maybe specific initiatives and opportunities that certain cities offer and that maybe might be shared as best practice from other cities to other cities. But here I really want to sort of discuss how we understand from the framework the different stages that creative workers go through, and how using those stages we can really think about what are enabling and inhibiting factor for each of those stages, and so trying to intervene and think about what matters for sustainable creative work across those stages. So at the first stage, as you see, is the preschool stage, the pre-university stage. So the kind of arts and creativity that most of us had the privilege to access in early education. And that early access we found from our interviews was extremely important. So although we interviewed people very late in their career, we found that lots of them remember moments in which they met people that supported them very early around their creativity and the creative opportunity they had. We also found that people really remember this kind of people that supported them and give them access. And also on the other side, while they remember the people that gave them access, and here there is some really insightful quotes, they also remember moments where people sort of undervalued creativity or suggested to them that certain academic curriculum disciplines are better to focus on than creative arts. So we see that actually time and opportunities for children, for young people to just experience creativity is really important, and it does matter in introducing those people to potential careers in the future. But it also does matter the fact that sometimes those opportunities are undervalued in our society. So it seems like time spent on arts and creativity is wasted compared to time spent maybe improving reading, literature, or math skill. So this is a barrier if we don't actually suggest that those early access are key moments to support the development of inclusive creative work. as people move within education and access higher education, we found that also here we had some really strong experiences shared by people about what gave them opportunities and what took it away. And here again, we find that economic consideration became something quite important. So higher education and the access to higher education was a question. So having free higher education was an opportunity to experiment with creativity that not everybody had. And again, here we see that the inability to access certain courses or certain degrees was seen as a barrier, whether that inability was financial or was geographical, but also whether that inability was pushed by maybe families or other education providers, suggesting that that was not the best investment of time for people to undertake specific courses. Within the sector, within the higher education sector, we found also that a lot of people thought that while the university prepared them very well on certain creative subjects, it didn't always connect them with the kind of job opportunities that that subject could lead to. And here we find that actually universities are not very good in general to interconnect creative disciplines with other disciplines that are really important. So whether that's the economic sector, whether it's health, whether it's social care. So thinking much more about breaking the boundaries between creative education within university and other degrees was considered an opportunity that is underdeveloped. When we look at entering creative professions, so the early career stages, as graduates sort of look for jobs, networks are really vital. And actually a lot of people get stuck in those initial stages and unable to make a sustainable career because there isn't enough support within those early stages. So again, here we find the enabling factors are there, and sometimes some cities are really great in providing workspace for recent graduates, financial support, but on the other side, if those are not there, then people sometimes decide that that's not the career for them. So actually inhibiting factor seems to be specifically the traditional unpaid labor that is required by people who have this kind of degrees, and also just the fact that there isn't much of a provision in those early career about the kind of workers' rights, the kind of format of work, training on freelancing, on taxations, on giving people mentoring and support to understand better what it means to work and have a creative career. When people, as you can see from these quotes, people really struggle at the beginning, and even organizations that provide internship, that try to be fair and provide support for people to undertake internship within this sector, struggle to provide them with fixed employment or proper employment. So it is really a struggle to think about how those early stages are much more supported, and intervention are really needed in these early stages. When we talk about making a living out of creative work, so the first stage, we obviously have talked with a range of very successful creative professionals. So these are freelancers, people who started their own companies, employees, and obviously there is a wide sector of society where this is possible and this happens. However, I think the majority of people we talk with has some sort of juggling to do to make their creative career work. It wasn't straightforward. And that juggling obviously requires sometimes working in other sectors, sometimes working in different sectors of the creative economy, piecing together sort of opportunity for themselves to make a sustainable living. And here again, we find that the main barrier is sometimes the kind of work framework. So the fact that creative work is seen more as creative than work. So people kind of ask, why can my work be recognized as any other form of work? Why haven't I got the rights to do this? Why haven't I got some social security, some protection? So because it is creative, but first of all, it's my time and it's my work, and therefore it needs a fair pay. So this is, again, a struggle that many are experiencing. And obviously there are enabling factors. There are people who are intervening. There is co-working, apps, clusters that provide opportunities for this. But the recognition of creative work as work is really important, and it has been even more important in the agenda of a lot of European countries following COVID-19 and the pandemic, because of the lack of social security that a lot of workers have experienced in this period. Again, you can see in some of these quotes very much the feeling of the struggle of getting paid, the struggle to keep your fingers in many different pies, trying to do and also be flexible about your identity and who you are and what to do. And that remains a struggle that is often there for a very long time for people before they can establish themselves. And finally, a final stage that we investigated was very much around the idea of some sort of exiting of creative profession, of moving into other supporting roles within the creative economy. This is something that is in many ways underexplored in this ecology, but we found very much almost a duty of care of a lot of creatives that sometimes have made it successfully within their career, but at a certain point they feel their role is very much about encouraging creativity, enabling others to create, going back to education and training others to have a successful career, providing funding, space. So really thinking about how having a role within a creative economy and potentially being a successful creative person is a key factor in enabling others to do so as well. So in this area, again, we found a lot of care structure, a lot of people really wanting their cities to succeed, really wanting young people to have a go with the creative economy, really wanting to make the sector a bit more equal, a bit more open to others. So there was a really strong agenda in here, which we kind of almost were not expecting. And this is very interesting because on one side, we find that that agenda is there. On the other side, we find that often the work of these people that are there to support the creative economy is under-recognized by policy. So here we see a major inhibiting factor in the fact that while there is a sort of a really broad range of intermediaries that are really there to support other people and invest in cities and invest in this creative work, what we find is that policy sometimes doesn't recognize their work, doesn't give them enough opportunity to support other creatives, doesn't give them enough platforms to make sure that care can be delivered and supported throughout. So this is sort of some of the key findings. As I said, we will explore more differences across cities to provide also examples of best practice that would be useful throughout Europe. In my last slide, that will probably be picked up next in the policy panel, is really suggesting that all of these highlighting these different stages give us the opportunity to really think how policy intervention can be a lot targeted, can really think about the life cycle of the creative and how at each stage policy plays a role in supporting activities, in providing funding or other frameworks, but also how policy really needs to learn to maximize what's there. You know, if you have people that are doing the right things, if you have people that are caring for creative workers and providing infrastructure, then policy is there not to reinvent the wheel, but really to support the people that are already doing it and recognizing their work and adding value to the local ecology through that mechanism. Thank you, everyone.